Hi, I'm Dr. Eve Delunas, and this is part 4 of a 4-part video series on negative core beliefs. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how you reprogram your brain. How do you change a negative core belief, a limiting core belief, something that's holding you back, something that's limiting you in some way, a belief about yourself, a belief about other people, or a belief about life in general. Now, I want to emphasize that the method I'm going to be sharing with you is one that I've used many times with clients over the last 35 to 40 years in my psychotherapy practice. And I know it works because I've seen it work again and again with all kinds of different people with all kinds of different negative core beliefs that they're wanting to reprogram. So it does work. It's not the only way to go about doing this, though. If some other way feels more comfortable to you and there's another way that you prefer, by all means, use it. It doesn't have to be this way. I'm just sharing this as one alternative that you may or may not choose to use. I've got a hair in my eye here. All right. So something about why the way I'm going to share works so well. You might recall I talked about implicit memory in video number 2 in this series. I talked about how negative core beliefs are stored in our implicit memory banks. We don't even know they're there, and we don't know that they're affecting us when they are. Well, it turns out our implicit memory banks, where these negative core beliefs are stored, our implicit memory banks are in our midbrain, which is a part of the brain that is nonverbal. That's why I've had so many people come to me and say, I know in my head that I'm good enough, but in my heart, I still feel like a piece of garbage. That's why talking to yourself and explaining to yourself, this doesn't make sense, doesn't change the way you feel deep inside. Because it's not reaching the part of the brain where these negative core beliefs are being stored when you just talk to yourself, because they're stored in the nonverbal part of the brain. Fortunately, your imagination does reach that part of the brain. It's nonverbal. Your imagination is nonverbal. You're having images, symbols, stories, metaphors. You're pretending to imagine these things, and it actually reaches that part of the brain and rewires the brain when it comes to your core beliefs. So you can go from feeling and believing something that is limiting to something that is more unlimiting, that opens up new possibilities and opportunities for you, that helps you to see your life and yourself through a whole different set of eyes. So the imagination, using your imagination, is a big key in a big help in reprogramming your core beliefs. So how do you go about using your imagination? Well, it starts with thinking of a core belief you would like to reprogram, and then closing your eyes. Now, do this at a time when you can be alone and you can kind of contemplate, meditate, if you will, and really go within. And think about the core belief that you want to change, and then ask yourself, and you have to ask yourself with a strong intention. Like, it has to be something you really want to see and really want to know. If it is, and you put that point across to your inner self, it will show you this information. So you ask your inner self, please show me, where did this negative core belief come from? When did I first make this decision about myself? And it will be shown to you. Now, it may come immediately. It may come in 15 minutes. It may come the next day when you're taking a shower or washing the dishes. But it will come to you. You will get it loud and clear. And the idea is, when you ask the question, not to try to figure out in your brain what the answer is. Let it be presented to you. And what will be presented is either a scene or a series of scenes. And those scenes will be important times, important situations in your life, circumstances that you faced when you made this decision. Now, the circumstances and scenes, chances are very good there will be a lot of emotion attached to them, because usually when we do come up with and make a decision that is related to a negative core belief, it is an emotional scene. Maybe we're feeling scared, maybe we're feeling angry, guilty, shameful, bad. It could be any number of things. It doesn't have to even be one of those things that I just listed. So when you revisit this scene, in your mind's eye, you're going to have two objectives in order to rewrite or reprogram that core belief. One of the objectives is you want to change the belief. You want to convince yourself, your younger self, that a new belief is more appropriate given what's going on in the scene, or given who you are and what your present day self knows about you and how that present day self sees that scene in a new and different way. So it is often a good idea to have your present day adult self go with you to meet with your child self in that earlier scene and help your child to make a new decision. You can rewrite the scene in any way that you want to be able to make that new decision. The second thing that you want to be sure to do while you're reprogramming a core belief is to deactivate the emotional charge in that scene. As long as there's an emotional charge, then you are likely to hold on to the old negative core belief. What do I mean by deactivating the emotional charge? I mean releasing the emotions attached to that scene, making peace within yourself with respect to that scene, so that you can think about that situation another time and you don't have strong feelings come up about it. You remember it, but you don't have the stabbing feeling of pain or fear or shame or guilt or whatever else you might have felt come back when you imagine that scene. You have deactivated its emotional charge. And how you do that is you tell yourself, I'm choosing to feel these feelings now and let them go. You have to feel them before you can let them go. But feeling them without getting carried away with them. Feeling them with the idea that I'm releasing them, I'm allowing them to dissipate, I'm freeing myself of these emotions just as I'm freeing myself of this negative core belief. So that's one thing to do. That's very important to do. The second thing to do is to install the new belief, and that is to tell yourself and use your imagination to pretend that you now hold a brand new, positive, unlimiting belief on the same topic, whether it is of your value and self-worth, or whether it is about you being good enough, or how other people are going to treat you, or what your life is going to be like, or what you deserve in life. You're going to play with your imagination and imagine that you now have that new belief, and imagine how that changes your life and how it feels to be holding that new core belief. Now, I'm going to give you an example of how I worked with somebody and he rewrote one of his core beliefs. And this is a 23-year-old guy that came to me and said, I'm depressed and I hate myself. And we did some work to find out that the reason that he was depressed and he hated himself was that he was badly physically and emotionally abused as a small child by his single mother. He was the only child, and she was not a well person and took out all of her anger and frustrations and who knows what on this poor, helpless child. And he suffered a lot based on what he told me and shared with me about the way that he was treated by his mother. And so it was during these experiences that he decided, which is what children decide when they're abused, that this must be about him, that he was a worthless piece of garbage. And he had gone through life treating himself and thinking of himself and expecting other people to think of him as a worthless piece of garbage. Not surprisingly, had gotten into some relationships in which he was abused by his partners. Not surprisingly, feeling depressed and hating himself, carrying around that core belief in his heart, I am a worthless piece of garbage. So we went back to some of the scenes with his mother, and we rewrote those scenes so that he could, his younger self, first of all, could get nourished and supported and loved and cared for by his adult self, so that he could start to learn to love himself by loving this little boy inside of him who was hurting so badly. And second of all, helping that little boy to see his mother's behavior had nothing to do with him and his worth and his value. It had to do with her mental illness. And so he helped his younger self to take on this new core belief. And that new core belief was, I have value, I'm lovable, I'm a valuable, lovable human being. And then he began to play with his imagination in various times and places, and practice thinking of himself in those new ways and feeling how it feels to consider yourself valuable and lovable and what that means about you and your life and what's possible for you. So that's an example of how somebody rewrote his core belief. And indeed, it made a very, very big difference in his life. He started making some healthier choices in terms of his relationships. And he started to really have self-respect and self-worth and treat himself in more loving ways and quiet that voice that said, you're a worthless piece of garbage, and that harangued him and judged him relentlessly and very negatively. So that's an example. I could go on and on about this. I've actually taught whole weekend classes on this topic to therapists, so there's much to be said, but that's it in a nutshell. If you are interested in using these methods and you are aware of some major trauma like child abuse, sexual abuse, child neglect, I recommend that you work with a therapist to do this kind of work. It helps to have a partner with you to assist you. Not in every case of every core belief that we want to rewrite, but if it requires that you're working with abuse, trauma, severe trauma like that, I recommend that you work with a therapist in order to do it. Now, I have a book that I have written called New Science, New Brain, New You, in which I outline specifically the steps to take if you want to reprogram a core belief, the steps that I've described here, but in much greater detail, much more specifically about what you do and how you do it. And this can be used in therapy with your therapist. It can be used alone by yourself, but it's a do-it-yourself guide for how to reprogram a core belief and then how to install new positive core beliefs that you want to have instead. Also, you will see down below the video here that there is not only a link for my book on Amazon and where you can purchase it if you choose to, but there is a link for a guided meditation, a free guided meditation that you can download and listen to. That is installing a new core belief. It's a great guided meditation. If you have a new belief you want to install, you can use this guided meditation, listen to it as often as possible, and it will continue to rewrite those brain connections and reprogram your brain so that you're no longer carrying this negative core belief around with you and acting as if it's the truth about you or your life when it isn't at all. So those are some things, some resources for you. I also offer free half-hour coaching consultations online. I do not do psychotherapy online, but I do offer coaching online. So if you would like a free half-hour consultation, please sign up and you will see how to do that also below. So thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful to you. Please be aware that you can write your comments and questions in the space below. I'd love to hear your comments and questions and be as helpful to you as possible. So I wish you well. Bye.